amantes de la paz.
We love peace. We deeply love peace. We don't want war here nor in any other place around the world. But if they dare to touch Venezuela, they're going to find us in every street.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where we look to keep you balanced with everything that's happening here in the United States as well as around the world. There's a lot happening right now, especially with Venezuela. So let's start by talking about what's going on in Venezuela right now. Now, in one of the previous videos, I told you guys about Russia's involvement in Venezuela. I also told you about China's involvement. We already know that Hezbollah and Hamas operate within Venezuela. And the latest development doesn't help our cause, which is that the Brits have just decided to stop sharing intelligence with us. Listen to this.
A breaking news exclusive now coming into the Situation Room. Watch this. The United Kingdom is suspending, listen to this, suspending some of its intelligence sharing with the U.S. because of the Trump administration's strikes against alleged drug boats in the Caribbean.
We are joined now by senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak and CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, to you first with this exclusive reporting. I mean, this is a big deal. The UK is arguably the closest ally to the United States when it comes to intelligence sharing. What else do we know?
Yeah, Pam, it's a really significant rupture here. Essentially, what we're learning is that the UK is no longer sharing intelligence with the US about these suspected drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean because it does not want to be complicit in the US military's strikes on these drug vessels and believes fundamentally that the US military's use of force against these vessels violates international law, according to multiple sources that we spoke to. Now, previously, the UK had been happy to help the United States locate and interdict vessels that were transiting the Caribbean that appeared to be trafficking drugs. But the key difference, of course, is that it was helping the Coast Guard intercept those vessels, arrest those on board, seize the drugs, and allowing these individuals to have some semblance of due process. But now the U.S., of course, has started striking these boats unilaterally with military force, killing everyone on board. The total now for number of people killed is around 76.
Now, look, I don't blame the Brits for not wanting to be involved in the operations that the United States is conducting, against Venezuela, especially since a lot of the drugs that are coming in and that are flooding through Venezuela from Colombia and other places don't necessarily affect them. So I understand their perspective. So this may seem a little bit concerning, especially since they stopped sharing intelligence with us. That intelligence that they share with us is some of the intelligence that we use to intercept these boats that are headed to the United States. However, it's not what you guys think. It sounds pretty bad until you hear this.
Now, it is unclear exactly how long this intelligence sharing suspension is going to last, but we're told that it has been going on for well over a month now, essentially since the U.S. began its bombing campaign.
So what you're telling me is that the United States has not even been using the intelligence from the Brits to intercept or destroy these drug boats coming out of Venezuela. So this isn't a big deal. So why does it matter? The United States has some of the most technologically advanced UAS systems and intelligence gathering systems in the world. So do we need the Brits? Not really. Would it be nice to have them for intelligence gathering as well and intelligence sharing? Of course it would, but this is not a big deal. We don't need them for that. On top of that, this has not deterred the United States from continuing the military buildup in the region. As a matter of fact, they just sent the Gerald R aircraft carrier to the region, which is one of the biggest in its arsenal.
Venezuela is ordering a massive mobilization of its military as the United States sends more of its own firepower to the region.
Amantes de la paz.
We love peace. We deeply love peace. We don't want war here nor in any other place around the world. But if they dare to touch Venezuela, they're going to find us in every street.
The military in Venezuela is an absolute joke. A lot of them believe that they have the ability to do harm to the United States, when in reality, if the United States wanted to and was in the business of conquering nations, they would have done it a long time ago. And let me tell you, it wouldn't take long in Venezuela. The issue that we always have when we attempt to take places like this, Vietnam, whether it's Venezuela or Colombia, is the jungle warfare that usually ensues, the guerrilla warfare that usually follows. That's why you have to have the will of the people behind you whenever you engage in any of these types of operations. I also believe it's funny that a lot of these military people talk about peace. That guy was talking about peace. We are a nation of peace. They are not a nation of peace. Remember, they've won dozens of elections, the opposition has, and Maduro's still in power. Every time the opposition wins an election or has a victory, what do? They overturn the results and they go ahead and throw everybody in prison. They throw everybody in prison. Political violence usually follows these elections. So all these politicians that make a name for themselves and win elections fair and square usually have to go into hiding, which is what's happening right now with the opposition leader, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So as a result of the aircraft carrier heading to that region, Maduro has elevated his military forces and has told them to prepare. So he has pretty much mobilized everybody in the country that wears a military uniform. Now, sending an aircraft carrier of that magnitude just simply gives the United States more options if they decide to strike. Now, I'm going to talk about, their ability to strike here in a second, but I don't think it's going to happen. But you know what? I think in reality, Maduro has some room to relax. The United States doesn't currently have the authority that it needs to strike a sovereign nation at will. They can't just do that. And I know I spoke to you guys about the War Powers Act previously and how the president has the ability to utilize that to strike other countries, but there has to be a specific stipulation for him to do that. And I don't think right now there's enough to do that. Listen to this.
Yeah, we reported back in September and since then that there are some within the Trump administration who are pushing a strategy to effectively conduct strikes inside Venezuela with the idea of pushing Nicolás Maduro, the president of Venezuela, out of power. That is still something some U.S. officials hope can be accomplished as part of this military buildup. But at the same time, we also know that the Trump administration told Congress just a few days ago that it doesn't currently have the legal justification to target anything inside Venezuela or any other territory, even though they are potentially seeking an additional legal justification that would allow them to do so.
I think one of the other reasons that the United States is going to rely on the opposition to fight this battle is because we understand that Russia, China, and there's other really, really bad actors within the country that are going to support Venezuela and support Maduro in his opposition against the United States. Let's not forget that Russia is currently at war with Ukraine because of their invasion. They're losing millions and millions of dollars daily. They're losing thousands of soldiers weekly. And a lot of that is caused by the weapons that we are currently selling Ukraine. I mean, we provide some very, very advanced weapons to Ukrainian soldiers, which are engaged in fierce battle right now with the Russians. You think they're just going to not do anything to try to get us back? Absolutely they are. What better way to fight a proxy war than to utilize other people's fighters, right? Other people's human assets. And that's exactly what Russia is going to do with Venezuela. They're going to try to hit us as much as they can, not directly, but by proxy as much as they can. So I think that's something that we need to expect. That's why we need to rely on the opposition to change people's desire, to make people understand that a free Venezuela is exactly what everybody needs. Although I know that there are a bunch of Marines on those ships that are just itching to get out there and engage in ground combat operations, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So for now, at least, I don't think any of that is going to happen. So I think the Marines need to stand by and stay ready, but I don't think they're going to be engaging in any type of ground combat anytime soon. Let's not forget that Trump's philosophy is peace through strength. Peace through strength. And he has demonstrated that with the 8 conflicts that he resolved in his first 8 months in office. I think this is just another conflict that he's going to look to resolve. And he understands, especially Secretary Rubio understands, that unless Maduro is taken out of Venezuela, that country will never stop being somewhat of a threat to the United States, even if it's through its being a port for drugs that are coming through it, or any other way. Remember that I told you before, there are remnants of Hezbollah and Hamas within the country. So that country right now is a safe haven for that. I think until we tend to this country, we are always going to have it in the back of our minds. You know, I've always told you guys that I think that President Trump should have won the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, solving 8 wars in 8 months is a tremendous feat. President Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize for just being elected. So that was terrible. So if you solve 8 wars in 8 months, I think you should definitely be rewarded for it. So correlated to that, and for those of you that are still in opposition to the United States doing anything in Venezuela, the situation on the ground needs to be taken care of. And if you don't think that I know what I'm talking about because I'm not on the ground, Let's listen to the opposition leader talking about why she believes that President Trump should have won the Nobel Peace Prize and why she believes that we need to engage Venezuela and we need to support the opposition in overthrowing the Maduro regime.
The Nobel Committee proved they place politics over peace, sort of disapproving that you got it and the president didn't get it. Have you spoken to President Trump about this? I mean, tell me why you dedicate yours to him.
Oh, because it's absolutely fair. And that's what the Venezuelan people feel. We're getting finally a leadership that is addressing this tragic situation in Venezuela that has been evolving for 26 years, as it should. We have been asked that this criminal structure be addressed using law enforcement. And that's finally what's happening. And I did have the chance to speak on Friday with President Trump. And it was a very good conversation. And I was able to convey to him our gratitude for what he's doing. And I absolutely think he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize because of incredible events that are taking place currently in the world. One of them, certainly the conflict in the Middle East and Gaza, which has had the support of the whole international community, every single side of it, including Latin America, certainly, but also because he has understood that, Venezuela is in the heart of the Americas.
In other words, President Trump understands the importance of Venezuela in the relationships that we have all throughout Latin America and the fact that it is in the heart of Latin America. Just imagine the relationship that we can build with Venezuela once the opposition takes over. It's going to be one of the richest countries in the Western Hemisphere. Just imagine how the energy prices would drop here in the United States if we can build a direct line to Venezuela in their reserves. And President Trump understands that. Let's not forget President Trump is a transactional president. What's in it for America is probably the first question he's going to ask. And rightfully so. Remember, he represents us, the people of the United States of America around the world. But, and I think there's a big but with him representing us all over the world, I think he needs to pull back from everything that he's doing right now around the world. And I think he needs to focus on America first. The American people are hurting right now in this country, economically. We are hurting. Prices are not low. Prices are high. And affordability is a problem. And the fact that the president continues to deny that affordability is a problem in itself. And unless he addresses that, I think the party's going to suffer because of it. Remember, everything that the Republicans do now is going to lead up to the midterms. Unless affordability is fixed, unless prices are reduced, and people don't see the pain in the grocery store and the gas pumps, the Republicans are going to lose the midterms. I think one of the president's biggest weaknesses right now is the continued denial of affordability. So let's listen to what he says when he's asked about affordability and whether it's prevalent right now in the United States.
Is this a voter perception issue of the economy, or is there more that needs to be done by Republicans on Capitol Hill, or done in terms of policy?
More than anything else, it's a con job by the Democrats.
So the president says that affordability is a con job by the Democrats. It's a con job, it's a hoax. That seems to be his favorite thing to say these days. It's either a con job or a hoax from the Democrats, right? It's not his policies. I think we need to address that because it's become a true problem for the American people. And you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of President Trump's last presidency when COVID happened. When that happened, President Trump, I think, was going to win re-election until he began to deny the severity of the situation, right? He began to, play down the effects of COVID and the millions of people who were affected by it, and also the people that were dying from it. I think people started to say, well, is he disconnected from reality? I mean, we're locked up in our houses right now. If it's not severe enough, then why are we locked up in our houses? So that continues to be a problem with President Trump. It's downplaying the obvious that's happening right in front of him, what's happening to the American people. And I think he's too disconnected from that right now. You know, the affordability piece is not a con job from the Democrats right now. It is a true pain that the American people are feeling right now. Look at gas prices right now. Look at this chart. Gas prices are right where they were a year ago. Once again, I think we're being bamboozled right now by the Republicans when it comes to the economy. I think there's a lot of things that they're doing great, But when it comes to the economy and affordability, I think they're losing on that right now.
The president says that grocery prices are down. What numbers is he basing that off, given that's not true, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene has acknowledged that it's not accurate?
Right. Well, I guess the question, inflation is down. It's one of those things that very often when people talk about economics, they slip derivatives, as we say. And so the point is that inflation is way down. It averaged 5% under Joe Biden. It's running at about 2.5% right now. And the thing, though, is that people's purchasing power dropped by more than $3,000 because of the inflation in the last 4 years. It's up by about $1,200 this year. And so purchasing power is improving, but we haven't closed the entire gap, and that's why people still feel the pain of the higher prices.
Grocery prices are up.
Well, not everything. I mean, egg prices are down. We used to talk a lot about those. In fact, it was your first question here at the White House. Why haven't you covered the lower egg prices?
About household prices, we certainly have covered that. Energy as well, but grocery prices are up about 1.4% since Trump took office.
Which is a big decline in the rate of inflation.
But the president
is saying
that they're down and they're up.
Inflation is down is what he means.
Which is also one of the reasons I think President Trump is trying to distract from that by offering $2,000 stimulus checks. $2,000 stimulus checks. What needs to happen is they need to look for a way to reduce the cost of living in America as a whole. Forget about sending that $2,000 stimulus check. Fix the affordability issue. If you do that, then we don't need the $2,000. I mean, I'll take it. If you send me a $2,000 check, I'll take it. But instead of doing that, let's go ahead and focus on the problem. Unless we focus on that problem, then more and more Americans are going to look to socialism as an acceptable form of governance, right? Remember what I told you before. If you're struggling, if you are hurting, if you're a person that can't even find a way to feed your family, you're going to look to somebody that offers you solutions. So listen to Leland precisely describe how American people are feeling right now.
But this is the point, though. You said something really important. You said the American economy, which you're right. The American economy is doing great. It's when people feel like their own personal economy is not doing all that great. So this is by the numbers. Worries over the government shutdown surged in early part of November, pushing consumer sentiment down 30% since January to its lowest point in more than 3 years and just off its worst level ever. You got to go back to the 1950s. 61% of Americans think Trump's policies have worsened economic conditions. 79% of independents disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. Nobody cares what unemployment is. They care whether they got money left over at the end of the week and don't have to think about what groceries they can buy or not.
And now listen to Bill O'Reilly talk about why Americans are so angry. I think he makes a couple of very, very important key points here.
So what President Trump should do is to appoint a cost of living czar, someone who would go out a couple of times a week and say, these are the problems, here's what we're trying to do to solve them.
President Trump has assigned people to many different positions. Why not appoint a cost of living czar? The cost of living czar would focus on affordability. It would focus on the details of American living, of the cost of living, of how Americans are doing. And then he would brief the president on all of that. And that would keep him connected with the community, with the society, and prevent him from falling victim to what most people fall victim to when they're in positions of power, which is losing touch with reality, losing touch with what's happening on the ground. But I have faith in the Trump administration, right? He is the current president, and I'm going to support him as such. If it was a Democrat in office, I would be supporting him, expecting him to do great things, right? So as President Trump is in office, I'm expecting him to adapt to the situation that's happening right now with affordability. And I think he's got some people around him that are pointing that out to him. Listen to this.
White House officials, Sarah, have been privately discussing a number of different strategies to try to get at this issue. And one of those is having the president travel the country to give economy-focused speeches. Now, look, I mean, I think the bottom line through all of this is that the White House recognizes that they have an issue when it comes to affordability and the cost of living. And what I was told was essentially that they argue that what they are doing to try to ease Americans' financial anxieties just aren't resonating with the public. Now, the White House and officials have essentially advised President Donald Trump not to brush aside or dismiss these concerns. The advice that they are giving the president is you need to recognize that this is a problem and offer solutions to try and help all of this. And some of the discussions that are happening behind closed doors, Sarah, are these talks on really focusing more on his domestic agenda, cutting back on international trips.
Now, look, I think international relations are very important to this country, especially when it comes to ending conflicts all around the world that may impact us, not necessarily now, but in the future. But I think if he wants to stay in power and if they want to win the midterms, he needs to focus on America first. The everyday American is not seeing what he's doing internationally. They're not seeing that he's bringing in trillions of dollars worth of investment. What they're seeing is how much that bill is when they go to pay at the counter in the grocery store. What they're seeing is how much their gas is costing right now, which is not really much better than it was a year ago. So I understand what President Trump is doing, traveling around the world and negotiating all types of deals, but the fruits of his labor are not going to come now. They're going to come later. So the question is, what is he doing right now for the American people that are feeling it when it comes to trying to afford to live every day? Okay, enough about the economy, because the economy is a little bit depressing right now, you know, not just for me, but for everyday Americans as well. So the economy is a little bit depressing right now, to say the least. So let's go ahead and throw a little bit of humor in here. So I know in the last episode I talked to you guys about Hakeem Jeffries, calling Dr. Oz a rando and a joke. Here's a little bit more on his resume. And I think you guys are going to find this very comical.
Dr. Oz, you and I have known each other for about 30 years now. And I put together this little collection of potential qualifications that you have. You did your undergraduate degree at Harvard. You did your MB at UPenn. At the same time, you did an MBA at UPenn's Wharton School. You're a renowned cardiothoracic surgeon at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. That's when you and I first met. You created the complementary medicine program at Columbia Presbyterian. You're a professor emeritus of Columbia University. You invented the mitral valve clip. Harvard called you one of its 100 most influential alumni. And Time Magazine named you one of its 100 most influential people. So do you want to take a moment here to respond to the minority leader?
Well, Congressman Jeffries panicked. You know, he didn't understand the message that's an important one, so he tried to attack the messenger with an ad hominem approach.
So just to be clear, he is one of the 100 most influential people. Yet the Democrats are calling him a rando and a joke. So who's the joke now that everybody's grabbed hold of this story and published it everywhere? The Democrats continue to put their foot in their mouth, even if it's the smallest things, right? The big one was the government shutdown. The smaller one is calling somebody like Dr. Oz with those types of credentials a joke and a rando. So let's go ahead and move on to the next topic, and it's political violence. You know, there were a lot of people giving President Trump a lot of flack and pushing back when he was cranking down on universities and the fact that they're mostly liberal. And that's unfortunate. I think people need to understand what that leads to. It leads to violence. It leads to a one-sided opinion and a tremendous unacceptance of anybody else's opinion. And that's terrible. We can't live like that. So what's the causal factor for all of that? Why is it that we are so lopsided when it comes to universities and university policies? Well, that's because at some of the greatest universities in this country's history, like Yale, 77% of the faculty is Democrat. And if you think that's bad, at Harvard, it's about 3% that are Republicans or conservatives. So if that's the case, how can we engage in meaningful dialogue if everybody teams up against one side? And if you're wondering about public universities like Berkeley, which is one of the top universities in the country as well, the ratio is about 10-1. And if you want to know what happens when you have a 10-1 ratio, when you have TPUSA comes to your campus to speak, this is what happens.
Chaotic images near UC Berkeley during the final Turning Point USA campus tour stop. Look at this. Exclusive News Nation video shows two men fighting as police struggle to contain the scene. We've now learned there were multiple arrests as crowds gathered outside chanting and setting things on fire.
So I want to be clear about who these people are. These aren't Democrats. These are not Democrats. These are the extreme faction of the Democratic Party. I know plenty of Democrats that don't engage in violence. All these people know how to do is engage in violence. And that's what you're seeing right there. We're talking about setting things on fire and engaging in violence, right? Assaulting people. So why didn't those people just get in line and go into the TPUSA event? Have dialogue inside. Why not? Tell them that you disagree with their views. Tell them that you would disagree with their policies, and then dialogue about it. Instead, they were outside setting things on fire. Well, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you guys got some really good information from it. If you did, go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that notifications button so that whenever I post a video, you guys get notified. Until next time, stay balanced.